Hello, fellow Vintarians. Oscillascape is in the house, transmitting good vibes on all frequencies. Welcome to the second episode of Vintage Voices, a series intended to shine the spotlight on the various members of the community: streamers, YouTubers, modders, developers, you name it. The second guest of the show is none other than QPTech. He is a vintage story modder and a YouTuber best known for Chisel Tools, an indispensable mod widely used by the community. His Chisel mod is currently approaching 160,000 downloads on the mod page. However, that is not all. He also develops a popular tech mod, among a few other smaller ones, and he's constantly working on updating his existing mods or creating new ones. On top of modding, he also runs a YouTube channel where he does tutorials and guides and posts occasional gameplay. I am very grateful to QPTech for donating his valuable time towards this episode and really enjoyed getting to know the man behind one of the best vintage story mods out there. If you want to support the man, follow him on his socials, donate to him on Ko-fi so he can continue to cook us some awesome mods, and subscribe to his YouTube channel. All the links are in the description. So without further ado, let's welcome QPTech to the Vintage Voices. All right, so QPTech, should I call you this, or Quentin? Is that your name?
Quentin's fine, yeah. 80% people call me QP, even my wife and stuff.
So why don't you start by introducing yourself and give us a scoop on how'd you end up in this sort of vintage story sphere?
Yeah, my name's Quentin. I've been playing vintage story since 5 or 6 years or something like that, on and off. And I don't know, I just kind of stumbled into modding, and here we are, I guess.
Did you start modding with vintage story, or did you start modding with a different game?
I vaguely remember doing a bit with like Doom mods, but not much on that. I guess the first real try at modding would have been Morrowind. And I did some game development and stuff too.
Are you like programmer by profession? You code?
No, not really. I just kind of always into it. And obviously, when I tried my hand at game development, I was doing a lot of programming. Yeah, I've always liked it. When I worked in IT, I used it a bit here and there. Modding definitely forced me to up my game and learn parts of the C# language that I didn't even know were a thing.
Just kind of self-taught. That's interesting. Certainly very possible. My wife's brother, completely self-taught, now works in the industry. So with YouTube and the wikis and Googles, it's quite doable nowadays.
Generally, like, you can find stuff somewhere. Just a matter of searching. Literally last week, for the first time, I tried a bit of the chat GPT for programming help, and it was kind of scary how good it was at it. You have to be able to ask it the right questions, I guess, which kind of means that you have to be able to program somewhat to begin with, but it was very interesting.
Oh, no, for sure. I think it's a useful tool. I don't know a ton of programming, but I have definitely asked ChatGPT before to write me some scripts and, do some coding. So it's a good tool.
It was actually for the train track, the curves and stuff. Every time I tried to look up stuff, it got into math that was somewhat over my head. But it forced me to keep breaking down my question until it became clear. And then I actually, it wrote some code that I used, but at the same time, I kind of almost understood what it was doing with regards to angles and stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk about the railroad mod, but let's just do some general questions first. Did you originally come from Minecraft as well? Just like many of us? Did you play it?
Oh, yeah, I've played Minecraft since alpha days anyways. I don't remember exactly when, but since when fire could spread without limits. And I had the legendary early videos of someone burning their entire build down or something.
No modding for Minecraft, right?
I looked into it once or twice, and it seemed very difficult. And I guess it is a lot more difficult. It's probably easier the years go on, but it's not like Vintage Story that was made from the ground up with modders in mind.
Yeah, because you also then have to go on top of another API, right? You have 2 mod containers, and you have to pick one, and then right on top of that. So
I looked at it a few times. I really wanted to do it. And I think I did a bit with, I think it's Bedrock has it's not quite a full modding API, but I guess more like a scripting thing almost. But even then, it seemed difficult.
So do you ever go back and play Minecraft nowadays, or not really?
I still play Minecraft. I still like Minecraft, especially the Create mod, which you could probably see some of the influences on my new mods. But I recently tried with some friends, and we set up a little Minecraft server, but it's pretty rough to run. And the more I play Vintage Story, kind of the harder it is to go and deal with. One guy said it he was motion sick almost immediately, and I kind of get that way too, just the stuttering and stuff.
One of my first essay videos on Vintage Story was about Create mod, because we already have the rotational mechanics, and so we can definitely add a lot of Create mod features into the game. That would be awesome. It would be nice if Vintage Story kind of went down that route.
Yeah, Create's amazing. But it's funny, some people, if they're making or talking about Vintage Story or they're on the street, they're like, oh, the other block game, and they won't even say Minecraft. It's like, there wouldn't be a Vintage Story without Minecraft, even if Vintage Story has pulled out ahead of it in terms of playability and everything else.
Yeah, sometimes I don't know if that's a meme or not. I kind of meme about it. There's a block game we shall not name.
Yeah, sometimes it's memeing. I like the dot not Minecraft command that's in Vintage Story. Have you seen that one? It literally just puts in the top of the screen if you run it. No, this is not Minecraft.
Oh, really? Okay. No, I did not know about that. That's cool.
And no, that's a true meme, I guess.
I think Minecraft is a great game, and I still love it. It's a bit directionless nowadays, maybe a little bit bloated with content.
Especially if you take vanilla, then there's no comparison. Vintage Story completely guts Minecraft, I guess. I might eventually do a vanilla Minecraft run again, but it's pretty hard to get into that at this point.
How did you hear about Vintage Story?
Well, I think I was literally burned out of Minecraft. And I'd always heard, like, the meme was, oh, there's all these block games out there that are just ripoffs of Minecraft. So I started searching for them because I wanted to try something else. And it was actually surprisingly difficult to find. Somehow I came across Vintage Story, and I think I gave it a try then and played a bit.
What was your first impression of Vintage Story when you actually played it?
Oh, I thought it was really cool. Like, really new mechanics. It was scary again, interesting again. What Minecraft felt like when I first started playing Minecraft. And I definitely did get that kind of feeling.
I will say I feel like we're starting to exit super indie status.
This past year, I seen on Twitch, one guy dropped 7,000 viewer stream of Vintage Story. And before that, I remember a year ago, if you wanted to watch Minecraft on Twitch, you'd be lucky to find 100 people worldwide that are streaming it.
So what other games do you like to play?
I have no patience anymore for the AAA or whatever games. The opening hour or two where you're like, push control to sneak and jump through the hoops and listen to our story.
So you're not a fan of tutorials in a game?
I think I find I'm just not as into putting the time into learning a game anymore. I'm getting old and crotchety now.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't want to start Vintage Story then. Vintage Story has quite a steep learning curve. It takes a while for you to get going.
It does. Well, for one, I've been playing it for a while now, so that friction is gone. But also, it's very rewarding. I guess maybe because it doesn't have a strong tutorial. And honestly, I find the older I get, the less new games I end up getting into. Although my top Steam game is Slay the Spire. Like if I want to watch a video and then maybe I'm going to open Slay the Spire up. One of the few games I've 100%ed on Steam. I've played some Empyrean, which is, I guess, space Minecraft-ish, which is also very cool. And actually, I just bought Avowed this week. Always loved the Elder Scroll games ever since Arena.
Yeah, it looks kind of like Oblivion, Skyrim type of game.
Oh yeah, No Man's Sky. I'll fire that up every so often. And Enshrouded, we just did about 2 weeks of Enshrouded and got through all the content again, pretty much the minute-to-minute gameplay of Enshrouded. It's really good.
Yeah, I want to try Enshrouded. I was a big fan of Valheim. That kind of looks like that, and so I think I would enjoy it.
Valheim, I played the first bit, and it was really cool. It's one of those games I just never quite got around to going back to it.
It's pretty grindy, I would say that. If you have propensity for grindy games, then you'll probably enjoy it. Kind of like Vintage Story, I guess, is a grindy game too in nature.
I'm just looking at my Steam list now that you asked. I got Satisfactory, I have quite a bit in, and Grim Dawn.
Oh yeah, Grim Dawn. That's nice. I'm a big ARPG fan. I play a lot of, Grim Dawn, Path of Exile, Diablo, that stuff.
I never got into Diablo, but I played a lot of Titan Quest, which led me to playing a lot of Grim Dawn.
Well, they're making Titan Quest 2.
Yes, I'm psyched for that. And there's supposed to be another Grim Dawn DLC eventually.
So outside of gaming, what hobbies do you have?
I'm trying to think, actually, what do I do if I'm not at my computer?
Hiking, swimming, biking?
Sure, I'll say that I do all those things. Yeah, there's a Vintage Story, but that has also led me into, the modding. That's a related but not entirely separate hobby. And then I get into, a bit of video editing. Oh, I know one hobby I have, getting really deep into Suno. It's like an AI music generator. Because I've always been interested in procedural stuff, but just to dig in there and see what you can make it do. Or actually, my last video had a Suno song in it.
I know exactly what you're referring to, but let's get into this. So I kind of want to ask you, what inspired you to start your YouTube channel?
This current YouTube channel basically just started as putting tutorials out and stuff like that.
You hit a big milestone. You just hit 1,000 subs, so congratulations.
Well, I joined Rusty Gears. They have a whole YouTube advice channel, and I think it kind of challenged me to start pushing maybe a little on the channel more. At first, it's like, oh, I don't care that much. And then you start to see the numbers go up. And of course, as it gets to 1,000,
Now you can get monetized and become an official Google employee, huh?
I need a couple hundred more watch hours, which shouldn't be too long, except my videos are also short. I can make dozens of pennies.
When I started my YouTube channel, watch hours were never a problem, but subscriber count was always the hard part for me to reach. For people that do short form content, it's the other way around. They can get the subs easier, but they have harder time with the watch hours.
It helped being in Rusty Gears, which if people don't know, it's like a hermit craft sort of thing, a group of people that play vintage story together and make videos together in one shared world.
How come I wasn't invited? What's up with that?
Sure, if you're interested.
Yeah, maybe next season. I keep wanting to do like my first video on multiplayer. I've never done it, so
Some things that have kept me going in vintage story, definitely like modding, but also multiplayer. And there's so much knowledge too, right? Like in Minecraft, you could try and break up tasks, but I mean, everyone's going to go get iron and diamonds whenever they want, sort of thing. Maybe someone builds a farm, a villager trading hall or something. Rusty Gears, we literally had someone that just cooked, and not because like they were assigned to, because that they love the cooking mechanics.
right. It kind of echoes real civilization. People just specialize and do their own thing. You have a cooker, you have a smelter, you have somebody who goes out there and hunts. So I can understand that. I actually play quite a bit of Minecraft multiplayer with my brother mostly. I'm familiar with that aspect. I never really played like in a large group or anything. So
My first multiplayer Minecraft was with my son. I think he was maybe 8 at the time. Still remember him staring down at me, with the Derpy Steve face and walling me into a cave. Like he was just looking down at me as he slowly like covers up the opening with blocks. And I don't know, it was pretty funny. Still kind of sticks in my head.
I have a very young son. I can't wait for him to actually grow up and start playing Minecraft. I'm definitely going to have fun with him.
Yeah, the funny thing I think now is I have at times tried again to play with them, but I think the way they want to play games is different than the way I want to play games. Or they get over it a lot faster than like I'm still ready to go and they're like, on to something else.
So I've noticed also on your YouTube channel, you posted a couple of gameplay videos specifically from, like you said, Rusty Gears SMP. Is gameplay video something you'll be posting more of, or it's just a novelty?
I probably will. I mean, that's in theory what Rusty Gear's all about. Although it's a lot of work and like respect to people. Like I think you posted to the edited long play video. Like it takes so much. I don't know how much time it takes you to edit those, but man, it takes me long enough to edit my little 2-minute videos.
It's pretty much a 2-month project. It takes me like 1 month of gameplay and like 1 month of editing to do a video.
Yeah, I think that's where streaming is kind of nice because you can just stream it, but it has its own stresses. Like you have to be on sort of right while you're streaming, keep the people entertained, which I'm better as a supporting cast, I think, than as a primary streamer.
I was asked to stream a couple of times, but the big problem for me is my setup. My children obviously make a lot of noise all the time, so I would have to constantly interrupt myself. I think once they grow up, maybe streaming will be more of an option, but in a current state, I think it will be too chaotic.
Once in a while, they'll knock on my door. They may even well over in this, but like my youngest is 13 now. So I remember back in the day, I played a lot of EverQuest and World of Warcraft until we had our first kid. And then it's like, no, you can't play a game that you can't pause. It's not going to work anymore.
Yes, pausing is very important. Also, I was going to say, I was one of the OG subscribers to your channel. Thank you. I've been subscribed originally, so way before 1,000.
I think the first thing I saw was your interview with Tyron, of course.
Yeah, I was surprised he agreed to it because I never done anything like that. And he's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So that was very sweet of him. Let's actually get into modding. So, what was your first mod for the game?
The first one I meant to make was just a simple connected texture mod. Sounded simple, but I did not get that to work for a couple years. QPTech was like the first main one, which started just as a fire pit loader and unloader. I've automated fire pits, and then I just kept adding and learning stuff and adding. And my friend Andy, who has some mods of his own, he came on board, which at the time I couldn't even set up a project by myself. If I had a new idea for a mod or whatever, I'd have to basically bother him to set it up, which is much easier to do now.
So, what motivated you to do a tech mod first?
Yeah, I love the tech mods. I like create, but I always like the tech mods. I love the storage mods, which is another mod I ended up making. Most of my mods have started directly from something that I wanted to do. I guess my most popular mod is Chisel Tools.
We'll talk about that as well. Let's stick with the tech mod for a second. So, you said that it's kind of a derelict mod. You're no longer developing the tech mod anymore.
Update it for 1.20. I guess there's a bunch of problems, which I will try and at least get it running. But in terms of like building on it, I guess you call it a tech debt or whatever. There's so many problems in the code because I knew some like C sharp, but I didn't know how Vintage Story did things properly. So I would do one system and then like learn some stuff. And so the next thing I do would be completely different. It was built on top of the other one or beside it, I guess. And that went on for 2 years. If I was to do serious work on it, it would have to be from scratch, I think.
Do you know if anybody else is developing tech mods for Vintage Story?
Yeah, there's Vintage Engineering, partner with them somewhat and like let them use our models and stuff to start. And that was kind of the idea was he would carry the torch. I haven't got to checking it out again in a while, but I guess he's getting pretty far.
Bottom line is that you're not that interested in continue developing the tech mod and you would rather work on other things right now.
It sits in the back of my mind, but the issue, of course, is that I know that I have to start over. So I'm really going to have to feel the urge to get back into it again. I don't know if I could renovate the existing one or if it would be like an all new thing.
So, what is the biggest limiting factor in developing cool tech in the game? Is it the engine? Is it just mostly lack of time? What's the difficulty?
The hardest thing you're going to hit is learning how Vintage Story does things. And I had a double whammy because my C sharp knowledge was limited. So I would hit something in Vintage Story. Not only would I have to understand what Vintage Story is doing, but it might have a new programming concept that I hadn't come across before. And for a while, there was a lot of limitations on functions being private, which means you can't get into it normally. There's ways around it, but they were cumbersome and at the time beyond me. They've been doing a lot of work. There's a whole giant thread just on the API, which is the thing that you use to make mods. They've been doing a lot of work on making it easier for modders to mod things.
And that's great. It seems like this game is extremely mod friendly. And I guess Tyrone's still doing a lot of work to make it even easier in the future.
No, it's great because he has a very specific vision for the game, but he also, part of that vision is making sure that it's open enough. Because even Minecraft to play without any mods is difficult. And it's the same with Vintage Story. I think everyone has their favorite mods that change the things that maybe they don't agree with in the game. But hey, you just get a mod. And every time he likes to make things harder and more challenging. And I'd say it's usually like a day before some modder comes along and makes a mod that undoes it, which is fine.
Where do you see Vintage Story Tech going in the actual game and updates? Do you think it's going to be more like Jonas magical type devices or more like physics based stuff like Create?
Big thing that I'm waiting to see is for these mini dimensions, which do feature in the current end game, but that mini dimension tech is the same sort of thing that the mod Create uses. I don't know if you ever heard of Create Aeronautics. That's basically, well, airships, but the ships themselves are actually base with Create machines in it that moves, and it's all because it's its own little pocket world that kind of gets rendered on top of the regular game world.
So this dimension stuff is mostly for movement, right? So you can create things that move around the world independently.
Have you done the new story stuff? There's a part where you could see somewhat of a different world, but it's a midi dimension, right? So it's not quite like in Minecraft. There's not like a secondary, like unlimited size world.
I know people are complaining about the parkour section. That's all I know.
Not to make a joke on people with actual PTSD, but we always joke about that. Our first run from that was not good. I don't want to like be negative Vintage Story, but I really hate the desolation. I hate it so much because it's like the entire game, you're trying to survive and build your knowledge of the game and, farming and building and all this stuff. And all of a sudden it's like, no, this is a parkour game now. I don't like it.
I think that in Minecraft it works a little bit better because there's magical enchants, there's elytra, you can put actually featherfall on your boots. So here you don't have that option. If you fall from a high ground, you're pretty much dead.
In Minecraft, you can get around how it was intended to play, but like in the desolation area, you can't interact. You can't put anything down, like any blocks down or take any blocks, which is also part of the disappointment. Like there's a bunch of really cool stuff after the RA, but it's like the RA, you can't really do anything with any of it.
I agree with that. I found it very weird that in the Resonance Archives, for example, you can't pick anything up. Maybe while you're doing the story dungeon, it should be locked, but as soon as you beat it, you're allowed to pick up blocks. That would be pretty amazing. The entire game doesn't work like this, right? This is a very special occasion.
And then there's a part which I won't spoil for you because it's super cool, but when you discover it, it should be, I think, part of the regular game.
I feel like automation is kind of a controversial topic just in general. How do you feel about automation? Do you just generally prefer if Vintage Story made more automation?
I remember actually in your interview, Tyrant says the finished story is not a building game, which has become a bit of a meme with my friends and stuff because he's built like one of the best building games. Then he says it's not a building game, and we're like, what?
Actually, don't remember the specific point about this not being a building game. What do you think he meant when he said this is not a building game?
He wants it to be like survival and exploration. If you take like a multiplayer server, it doesn't matter what story is added. The end game is actually your builds. And if you don't have a project to do, then that world's going to die pretty quick. And if it's so grindy to get stuff to do large scale builds, then for a lot of people, that's where they're out.
That was my point in my video as well. I like to build with non-textured blocks a lot, so like polished stone, and getting polished stone in quantity in the current game is basically impossible. That's why I always run stone quarry. It's always a default mod for me.
That would be an interesting discussion. What's your must-have mods? Or do you want to know my must-have mods?
Top three would be Chisel Tools, probably Health Hammer extensions, and Stone Quarry. Those are three mods that I probably play with every time I'm not doing like a vanilla run.
If I'm in a world where I'm planning on doing any building, I'm gonna have to have Chisel Tools, and it's not just because I'm arrogant or whatever. Well, carry on. Better runes, though, even though it can unbalance things slightly, but just having all those amazing runes in the world gives you more excitement when you go out. For me, anyways, that list does tend to swell. Like, oh, I got to have Napster because after you've smithed, 1,000 items, you kind of lose interest in smithing. But then it does make things too easy sometimes.
In my video, I talked about how I think we should go NPC route. There should be like a smithing NPC you can hire, and he can do like more complex smithing for you. So Hellhammer can still do plates, which makes sense in the physical world, but then you have an NPC that can do rest of your smithing. It does get kind of grindy.
I wanted QPTech to give you tools when you're at the end game that let you just build. Part of its problem is not balanced particularly well. It's kind of an interesting, fun grind to get there, but once you have the main machines, you can have an auto mine and ultimately just be spitting out finished steel, even steel plates at the end. My other mod is Storage Controller, which is an interesting one that I'm not sure if I always even want to play with. It's basically like applied energistics or refined storage a bit, where you just link it to some chests and throw everything in there and you can search through it and everything, which is cool, but man, does it ever make me lazy.
I think for end game, if you plan to play a world for like thousands of hours, I think something like that makes sense because then inventory management becomes almost too excessive. But currently, I'm just using a sorting mod. That would be a nice vanilla feature, just be able to sort your items and, auto deposit them in a chest.
Oh, the other one that's relatively recent, I can't remember what it's called, but what it has is the button like JEI would have in Minecraft, where if you have the stuff in your inventory, you just click the button and it throws the recipe into your crafting grid. And if you're like doing mechanical stuff or Jonah stuff, it's amazing to have that.
I want to ask you more about Chisel Tools. So that's your most popular mod. I think over 150,000 downloads at this point. So what motivated you to work on Chisel Tools?
Chiseling, I think, is one of the key end game features in Vintage Story. And I see that too in so many of these videos of the newer YouTubers finding it. They're like, whoa, what's this chiseling? And all of a sudden, they're hooked. And so that was me. I was pretty hooked. I remember chiseling before you could add materials even. Yeah, I wanted to be able to, copy my blocks. I wanted to be able to mirror on all axes and rotate on all axes.
These features like copying and rotating, is that something that needs to be in the baseline game, do you think?
Vanilla, you can rotate and mirror shapes with the chisel, right? But you can't do that vertically, which seems like that should be in vanilla to me. Like if you can flip something side to side, why can't you flip it up and down sort of thing? Copying, I could see, you have more of an argument, right? Like, should you be able to just wholesale copy a block? Obviously, I say yes, but I could see people, making the case that no, you need to grind out your shapes.
Let's do something like if your block is not very complex. You chisel it a little bit, you can put it in a copying machine, it copies it just fine. But then the more complex the block is, there'll be some threshold where you can't copy it anymore. You can't copy like a really elaborate piece of art, but a simple shape can copy easily because, sometimes you need 1,000 of these simple shapes.
Yeah, there's probably a better vanilla-friendly way to do it. I mean, Chisel Tools has really gone off the deep end, in terms of what it can do. And I do get pushback, especially when I added the Jonas paintbrush/Jonas palette, because all of a sudden, here's something that makes lantern-level lights really ridiculously cheap compared to, having to knock out a bunch of lanterns.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask you about the balance of chisel tools. So do you feel like these tools are maybe a little bit overpowered? Like do you feel like these tools just don't fit in Vintage Story because they're too powerful?
I could see you making the argument for it. However, I don't care and I'm using them.
So a good example, pantograph, obviously one of the best tools in the toolbox, so to speak. But unfortunately, it doesn't have durability. And it's extremely easy to put together. Once you do it once, you don't have to replace it.
It's supposed to have durability. There's just bugs that keep popping up that I keep thinking I've got it fixed.
Okay, so the intention was to have durability.
The durability that you get out of that compared to chiseling it by hand is not balanced. Some people are vanilla only, or maybe vanilla with a very few quality of life. And then other people are like, I don't care. I just want to build stuff. And I think Chisel Tools does tend to fall more on that side.
No, I agree with you. I think I like all the features. I just think I would like it to be a little bit more balanced in terms of the game. Like you said, durability for pentagraph. I think the durability for most of the tools is a little too high. I wish they broke down easier. And my other argument would be that the recipes need to be a little more complex, not as easy as just smithing a pentagraph. Maybe utilize Jonas devices, just make it like more of an end game thing that you get. There are something you can just do right from the start.
Yeah, I have thought a few times of making a separate primitive chisel tools. The problem, of course, with that is now I have a lot of users, including myself, really, that would not necessarily like that to be changed. And of course, the pantograph also lets you pull shapes between offline worlds or different worlds, which fairly powerful because you could actually, do everything in a creative world and just bring in the shape and bang, there you go. And it has made me, I find sometimes, instead of like, I'm going to chisel this wall section or whatever, I'm like, no, I already did this before and I'm just going to pull it straight in.
Presumably, you see a lot of people use your tools on videos or streams. What do you think people are sleeping on in terms of usage of chisel tools?
Well, I think some of the portfolio part of the pantograph, I made that one video, which you will see if you go to the Chisel Tools page, that I tried to cover everything. Stuff, especially with mirroring. In the last couple updates, I think I had added a mirror and paste tool to the pantograph. Like if you click on the left side, it's going to delete the right side of your shape and then mirror it and paste it back in, which is something you do all the time. And a lot of people also don't know about all the decorative objects. Like you can have your oven or whatever. It's an oven, but it takes the shape of your chisel block.
Is there any particular feature that you keep wanting to add, but you have some technical limitations?
More usually time and figuring stuff out. The big, I guess, feature that I still want to add is if you're working on a shape and you're like extruding out and then you hit the end of the shape. So then you have to add a whole other one and, break it all down so you can add this one little line. I just want it to automatically add the extra shape. And so you can just keep going and not worry about, as long as you have the materials in your inventory. So like you're bringing out a wall or a spike or something, and then you hit the end of that block. Currently, you have to drop in a new block and clean it all up and get back down to that one little shape and then keep going.
So has Tyrone commented on Chisel Tools at all? Has he contacted you to say anything about it?
Not directly, no. I mean, he has given me positive feedback just in general in the past, but never really heard any of them mention Chisel Tools.
So if he came to you and said, I want to incorporate Chisel Tools into the vanilla game, give me the mod, would you be okay with that?
Constantly on my videos, they're like, oh, they should hire you. And how come they haven't hired you yet? And I'm like, Chisel Tool is not something that I necessarily want in the vanilla game. I could see them bringing in like parts of it, especially like mirroring and stuff. But I mean, obviously, I'd be honored and open to stuff like that.
I can see Chisel Tools being incorporated in the vanilla game, but more of Jonas devices, something high tech, something end game.
Like a template function or a blueprint, and you're still going to have to sit there and maybe hold a button down. It'll help you make shapes, but not like, I guess Chisel Tools is almost like a creative mode thing, right? I have to keep pulling back from that. Like people multiple times, they're requesting, can you make it so we can, move multi chisel block things around, like copy a 3x3x3 statue. And I'm like, well, at that point, maybe you need to be using World Edit, because even I have my limits, I guess, for how unbalanced I'll make things.
Speaking of mods, if there's one mod that you think Vintage Story could use right now, what would it be? Like, what's the mod that you would want somebody to develop that's currently not available for download?
That would be a JEI, just enough inventory, which I have my TEI, but it doesn't really work very well. And I haven't figured out how to get around that. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but in Minecraft, it's a mod that It gives you all the items, and you could push H or U to see where it's used or made, which Vintage Story has quite a bit of that. But also, the things that are missing is shortcutting things or favoriting them, which, especially in Vintage Story, if you want to make yourself Hellhammer setup, it's hard to, for me anyways, to keep everything in my head. Like, okay, I need to make this, this, and this. I need a couple of those. If I could just have that saved in the game.
I hard agree with you. Yeah. And I think one of my gameplay videos, I said I wish it had similar crafting handbook as Minecraft. And people were like, it's in there. Like, just press H. And what I meant is, I wish you could copy the recipes from it, just click on it and it transfers to your grid. Currently, the workaround for me is to just take screenshots of all the parts and then like have a screenshot of my second screen as I'm trying to make Hellhammer setup, as you mentioned.
Improved handbook recipes. That's what you're looking for. If you have the stuff in your inventory, you can just put a little plus on the handbook and it will load up your crafting grid, which is like 90% of what I wanted. The only thing they're missing is to shortcut items.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I should definitely get that. I'm a big fan of quality of life mods. I don't see any issues with them at all. I use a ton.
Find My Bind that lets you search keybinds. That's something that should be in vanilla, which that's in all the big Minecraft packs, right? Then you end up with hundreds usually of key bindings.
Well, I think that one mod that I want, and I said that in Tyrone videos, I want replay mod. It records the gameplay, and then you can later recall any action in the game and then do like a third person recording of yourself. Currently, the only way to do that, it would be to run multiplayer server and then have a spectator account for Vintage Story. I feel like it would take the game to the next level because people will be able to make a lot cooler content for YouTube.
I know some of the Rusty Gear people, they have camera accounts. And I've actually been thinking about that because it's come up a bunch of times. I have another account. I don't have a machine to run it.
Well, the problem with camera accounts is that you have to then have a second computer and follow yourself around, right?
That would be super cool. I don't even know how you'd code something like that. You'd have to constantly record the state of everything. Oh, gosh, it makes my brain hurt. I know one mod that I would like to see that I think Tyron mentioned was the one that lets you see like an insane distant horizons. Because that actually almost got me to play like a vanilla Minecraft again. Just the sheer scale of, like with the right world gen mod, the closest it got me to feeling, like in Banff National Park or something, where you could actually have mountains stretching off into the distance. That would be probably one of the biggest game changers.
Yeah, he mentioned he wants to work on the LOD system, which would be part of the distance horizon type of thing.
6 months ago now, I upped my computer from 16 to 32 gigs of RAM, which is a pretty cheap upgrade, really, but that has made such a huge difference in performance. All of a sudden, my world can like generate chunks and keep up with me as I move pretty much.
What draw distance do you usually use with 32 gigs?
700 plus, anyways. Yeah, something like that. But I was having all sorts of hitches and stutters before I did that.
Another mod that I would like to see is a simple day counter, something that can just tell you what number of day it is. Oh, it's day 20, day 30, because currently I have to do it in post, which is really annoying.
The HUD clock I always use, that seemed like that'd be a really nice addition for that mod.
Yeah, I know. Do you know the creator of the mod? Can you hit him up and be like, hey, Oscillascape needs a 100-day video counter?
Another mod I thought would be really cool is something that lets you like name regions on a map. Like say that you discover a lake and then somehow, I don't know, maybe you hand in a survey and now this is called Lake Oscillascape. And then when other people see it on the map, it says Lake Oscillascape. And maybe even comes up on the screen when you get into that region. I always thought that would be super cool. The question when you start a new server that you dread is someone saying, how do I make a claim? It's like, well, go watch this video because, good luck.
Is it really complicated to make a claim?
It's complicated for like a new user. I can usually do it now without screwing it up. It's a powerful claim system, like it's fully 3D. Like there's the set in Minecraft that you just click on the chunks on the map and it's like, this is my chunk now. And you can add a group to it, which I think I saw a mod being worked on to do that, which would be a lot nicer. Even though it's not as powerful and you're claiming the chunk from the sky to the bottom, that would be a much easier way to handle that.
No, I agree. I think one thing that will prevent Vintage Story from becoming truly mainstream is a lot of quality of life issues like these. And that's something they can probably work on eventually after they add all the content.
It has been getting better too. So imagine you open up Minecraft for the first time and you haven't watched any videos and you're not looking up everything. Is even Minecraft like that easy to get into?
They're both fairly complex games, to be honest with you, so I can see that.
the depth of vintage story. Like I still find things too that I didn't know about after like years of playing, and someone will be like, oh, you can just do this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, are you serious? This whole time? I don't think I've ever made cheese yet.
Yeah, I've never attempted to make cheese yet. It's definitely on the list of things I have to try. So let me ask you about Rust and Railroads. Notice you developing a Railroad mod. So what is that all about?
It started like actually years ago. I had Rust and Railroads as a minecart mod, and you could send these little carts around. They would load and unload inventory, but I could never get the mounting system to work. Basically abandoned it for quite a while until like a couple of weeks ago. I always knew I would get back to it. I finally did. You can ride the minecarts and put a chest on there, and the main struggle I have now is the curves and stuff for tracks. It's been quite a journey to learn about that.
Is it a problem that the cars don't go around the curves or just it looks janky?
I've been going around the curves now. It's just dealing with curves is really, it's just math. If I was better at math and trig and stuff.
So to make a truly vintage story, I think you need either a steam engine or you need rails, but that you have to run with a generator, which you power by coal.
It's very early on yet, right? So for right now, you just push forward or push backwards, and it'll move itself along the track. There's no collision. There's no linking of cars. My vision right now is to take the minecart I have and got to have water tank on there and like a coal box and a boiler. And then you'll just have to keep the water topped off and the coal fed. And so it'll be a steam engine, I guess, basically. I haven't quite worked that out yet. Really, really want to keep it so you can use chisel blocks because, that's my whole thing. Plus, it's awesome. The big reveal was airships, which are actually a lot easier than trains because they don't have to worry about tracks. I don't have collision or anything set up yet, but I literally just started that. So yesterday or the day before, and I took my train car, said, don't worry about tracks, just do the player controls. And it was pretty easy, really.
Do the airships use the mini dimension system or how do they move around?
Right now, you take a tool. It's the same with the trains. You right click on like the corner of the chiseled block that matches the size. And then you right click on the default train, and then it just takes that shape and uses it. But there's other stuff I need to add, like, turning wheels or rotors. Like I modeled myself a little chiseled steam train, but it does look rather odd without any wheels turning.
What do you mean you did some modeling? Did you do some 3D modeling? Is that what you're referring to?
I did some chiseling. I made myself a nice, decent looking steam engine and realized as I got it moving around that it looks very odd without wheels that turn. I might do the create route where they have, create has bogies. It's like the base of the cart is the wheels, and then you build around there and you can add multiple ones and stuff. It's all TBD.
Are you ready to compete against Tyrone's minecarts? Because he wants to add that as well, right?
I'm sure his will be a lot more realistic. And if he adds stuff to the middle of the game, that's great. Like there was someone I think announced they were doing airships yesterday too, very early on. I also saw a chiseling thing coming up too that looked kind of cool. They had a cool UI where you could take slices of blocks off easily. There's always room for that, right? Like Minecraft has 4 or 5 train mods. As Vintage Story heats up and there's more players overall, that means you end up with more modders. I think we're going to see a lot of cool stuff.
I think that game is rapidly gaining popularity, and so the mods will as well. The competition's heating up, huh?
The last 6 months, like it seems to be accelerating.
Exponential growth. I think that's how it usually works with online presence, And then suddenly it's getting shared everywhere and everybody's playing, everybody's talking about it.
And it deserves it.
It does. And if it was on a more available platform like Steam, which is obviously a talk to death point, I think it would have also exploded.
Yeah, I think once it's ready to go, if he put it on Steam, it would explode. But I think there was an issue when that one big streamer, the login servers or something, were down just as he was going to start to stream, and because it's got so busy. So I know Steam, assuming they worked out the financials or whatever, and the game's all set up, because you only got one chance on Steam, more or less. That would be scary, I think, to all of a sudden drop, 1 million people.
Currently sounds like financially doing well enough that I think doing sort of a low pressure in development is better.
Personally feel like Vintage Story is just a very special game it has a special feeling to it. And even the community, it's quite different. And I think it is because it has grown slowly and organically.
A lot of new YouTubers will look for that one video that explodes or becomes viral. But unfortunately, here with that type of growth, you don't really have a loyal fan base and the rest of your stuff falls flat. So growing organically from the ground up is probably the best way because you have a dedicated fan base.
Oh yeah, like if the current crop of YouTubers or whatever that have just discovered it, like they're gonna move on to other things, maybe probably the game's still gonna be there.
Yeah, think about that Pokemon-like game that came out and everybody was playing it for a month. Got a meteoric amount of popularity and then just kind of died down and now people don't talk about it a ton. So
Oh, Power World, yeah. Finished story, just it's got a strong foundation for sure.
so you're from Canada. What's the weirdest food that people eat in your region?
The weirdest thing, I guess, is that we don't have a lot of our own foods, and the ones that we do have, they're almost all from Quebec. I find so. Like obviously, everyone knows poutine,
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up.
tourtière, which is again from Quebec, which is basically a meat pie, and I guess traditionally would have been wild meats. It's funny, half of our restaurant chains, they're named after US. Like there's Montana's, there's like Lone Star, and Eastside Mario's, Swiss Chalet. Like they're all named from other places. Fairly local Ontario thing is butter tarts, which is like a pecan pie, but without the pecan. It's pure sugar. They're so good and so bad.
Poutine, that's what I heard. I'm not a big fan, but teach their own.
I like a good poutine now and again.
What's something surprising about yourself that people wouldn't expect?
Maybe how old I am. I'm in my 50s and I don't act that mature. My wife's always pointing out, she's like, you're getting worse as you get older, which is, it's hard to argue against. That's just because I'm having fun.
I work with some Gen Zers at my work, and they always tell me like I sound like a typical Gen Zer. They're like, you speak like a lot of our friends do. I'm just like, well, thanks. I don't know. I don't know what that means.
I guess I'm Gen X, the forgotten generation.
During development of your mods, what's the weirdest bug you've encountered?
There's so many bugs. The bugs that you're always terrified of are ones that will corrupt someone else's world. Those are the ones that almost like keep you up at night. And there was one actually, and it still will happen. It's not directly a Chisel Tool thing, but you can have this block where if you look at it, your game will crash. And the first time it happened, I was like, please don't tell me I took down an entire server. Like I had to go into the server to try and help them, and eventually figured out that if you turn off your mini map and log in, then you can get in and get rid of the block, and then it's fine. There's just some call that the game is making to figure out what the main material of a block is. And I think you can end up with weird duplicated materials in Chisel Tools. Unstable Throne guys I play with, which is a bunch of other Twitch and YouTube users we play with sometimes. We've lost a few servers. Eventually something will come up and corrupt your world, and that's a hard pill to swallow depending on the world.
Okay, yeah, I can see that being scary.
And even on a server that if it backs up every night, the world corrupts at like 5 o'clock, and the last backup was from like 5 in the morning. Even that's a lot of time to lose. Choices you've made and things you've built and discovered, they're all gone.
No, I think I know the feeling. I was developing the build for my 200 Days Plains and Valleys, like the mega build. I was developing it in the 1.19 beta, and I was working for hours. And I did like a copy function, something like that. It was like a big chunk of copy, and it crashed my world and corrupted the save, so I had to start over.
Yeah, it's quite soul crushing.
Another question: who's your favorite YouTuber to watch?
Oscillascape.
No, you don't have to lie. It's okay.
Rubik's Raptor was one of the bigger ones. And I just happened to watch this morning a group playthrough, and it was so funny and entertaining. And there's another guy, Tomato. They made such entertaining videos. Like I will watch a Let's Play, a long one, but it's usually, not on my main screen to sit and watch someone play. But those ones were so entertaining. I just put my feet up and watched the whole video.
If I'm going to interview anybody for Vintage Story in that orbit, who would you want to see interviewed?
There's like Shino, that's one of the founders of Rusty Gears. I mean, there's lots of modders.
People mentioned like Dana as one of the modders people want to get interviewed.
Quite a prolific modder. I don't even know how many mods they have. I haven't tried it yet. Their gaming table one that lets you use chiseled gaming pieces. It's pretty crazy.
People also mention Cerity, and I asked her, but she says she's not comfortable with interviews. Instead, she suggested their builder, so I'm going to try to hit him up.
Well, of course, there's Nicholas and the Better Rooms crew. They like to set up tours and stuff sometimes. I'm sure they would be down. Better Rooms is definitely one of my top must-have mods in the world.
Yeah, I never played with it. Do you feel like it imbalances the game a little bit too? Because there's such elaborate buildings and structures now.
Like I wouldn't play it your first few times, especially through, right? Because you might find some leather or stuff, which they are trying to tone down. But yeah, you'll go through there and come out with a whole bunch of stuff you have no business having. They are trying to move more towards just structures. On Rusty Gears, our whole starting village was Better Runes Village that we came across. It was like a double spawn. And so we all moved into our buildings.
That feels a little cheaty, you know? You can also recycle the runes and use them as your buildings, but are they truly yours? Because you just, you hijacked them, okay? You're a squatter.
I don't like to do it all the time, but it is a cool start. And there's like their coal mine that everyone likes to start with. I would try a world with it one of your playthroughs, and just the things that you'll come across, it just makes it so much cooler just to go out and see. Because I love, even in vanilla, just go out and open some TLs to see what you find. Well, Better Runes, all of a sudden, you're going to find a lot of stuff.
Next question. So, if Tyrone asked you to work for the studio, would you take this opportunity?
Oh, yeah, I would. I most definitely would.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Thought the answer would be different.
I did some game development back in the past, and like modding is just a way to like address that sort of bug.
If you don't mind asking, what do you do for a living?
We own a small store that does engraving and embroidery and all that stuff, that kind of thing.
You guys have like an online presence at all, or just mostly local?
It's a local one, yeah. Yeah, just a little shop.
And it does enough business to support you guys?
We'll see. Pre-COVID, sure, but since COVID, it's been an interesting journey.
Okay, gotcha. So you're just running the store basically right now?
Yeah, I mostly run the laser and stuff. I could make my own merch, actually, I guess, technically, but problem's always shipping.
Mr. Quentin Chisel Tools, doing embroidery and chiseling in the real world. Who knew?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not good at the sales and stuff part, which is what is really needed, I guess.
Yeah, I would be a lousy salesman. I feel you. Well, in that sense, where can people find you and what they can do to support you?
I guess the easiest way, like, to find me is just at QPTech on YouTube. Most of my mod pages will have links back to my Discords and stuff. And I do take donations on Ko-fi. I had a Patreon going for QPTech, but I always found like that's more around like a monthly thing. And then if I'm not like working on it that month, I feel kind of bad that, oh, this guy's, they're just giving me money every month. Have I worked enough on the mod this month? I will go into, you almost get to the point where you burn out, and then I will take, 6, 7, 8 months off sometimes, but I always come back.
No, I understand. Ultimately, it's a hobby. So if it stops being fun, you should stop doing it.
I guess the first time that sort of cycle came around, I was maybe more concerned, like, am I ever going to work on this again? But now I know it's just almost seems to be tied to the time of year. I'll get into it, and then like by summer, I won't be into it. And that's where like I'll end up even a Minecraft or something. I'll be so burned out, but it always comes around again. And I think that break gives you new ideas. We were talking about with multiplayer is I find on a multiplayer server, you get this subtle pressure to keep playing beyond when you're not enjoying it, maybe. But, you want to hang out with your friends or whatever. So maybe you keep grinding away in a world until you really can't stand to play because you probably should have taken a break, but instead you keep grinding on a world or something, which I guess is an issue with doing YouTube and everything, right?
Originally when I started doing it, I had obviously very few viewers and very little viewership. And once it starts piling up and you actually start earning like some money on the side, it definitely is harder to say no to it. I'll say that.
I mean, if I could make a living doing this, which is pretty long shot, I think, with vintage story mods and some of the big Minecraft projects, they are doing quite well. There's probably 2 orders of magnitude more Minecraft players, right?
No, for sure. I'm nowhere near being able to support myself with YouTube and quit my daily job. That would be pretty awesome.
It would be. It would also be, I don't know, gotta kind of wonder too, like once you are making a living at it, maybe you don't feel like playing or whatever, but all of a sudden it's like, well, if you don't play, you're not gonna make any money, then you might come to resent the thing that you enjoy doing.
Right. There's a saying, the quickest way to hate something is to make it your job or something like that, right?
Well, having said that doesn't mean I'm not going to try.
No, you should. I think you should have more viewership on YouTube for sure. That would be nice. And speaking of YouTube, I actually wanted to ask you, you developed a farm for British Story recently, right? It was like a temporal storm farm.
That was an interesting one. I discovered that the decorative fences and chisel tools, like they're meant to just to be decorative fences, right? Like you put the fence down and put your own shape over it. So then you have a fence that looks however you want to look. But there was a weird thing with those where the enemies didn't quite register that you were there somehow. Like it's like they kind of know that you're there, but they won't attack through the fence. So, well, if you put line a bunch of fences up, you can attack them and they just won't attack you.
These decorative fences are in vanilla game?
No, they're in Chisel Tools. And like it's because I think if you put two vanilla fences beside each other, they connect, right? And it makes a solid wall. Chisel Tool ones don't connect. It's a bunch of separate posts. But then there's something about it being a fence that I think tells the enemies don't bother trying to attack through this fence. But it doesn't stop you from attacking through the fence.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised that there's not more farms for Vintage Story on YouTube. Looks like Solston had the boiler, but not so much else.
I know he hates the idea of those farms because in Minecraft, farming is just part of the gameplay, right? Like in vanilla Minecraft, you're going to make an iron farm probably, and you're going to make a creeper farm eventually. To do that in Vintage Story is very difficult, which just kind of makes it a fun challenge. And then with the last update with Bowtorns wanting to stand away from you, and then the shivers, yes, being able to climb up a lot more and fit under a 1x1 space to come up with any sort of mob farm. It's not impossible, but it's not easy. That one that I posted, you still have to do a lot of the work, and it's still not 100%. You can get stuff stuck where you can't harvest it, all that sort of thing.
And it's cheating because they're using chisel mods, not a vanilla mechanic, huh?
One of the shoots, I think, had a similar effect, apparently. So you might be able to do it in vanilla.
For me, what I need is a Jonas part farm. Somebody needs to figure out how to farm Jonas parts more effectively.
Yes, I think in vanilla some of them drop Jonas parts. So it is a Jonas part farm now, which I think is a thing that Vintage Story is bad at. Like, that's one thing I don't like is like a temporal storm, because it's cool the first couple times, but eventually it just becomes either everyone on the server logs out or you go hide in a hole till it's over. And even if you do go out and fight, you're lucky to get anything for it.
Yeah, I made that argument in my interview that, temporal storms are generally pretty unrewarding mechanic currently. You don't get a ton for fighting the drifters.
If I'm starting my own world, I might have the storms turned off.
Maybe it should be a lore-based thing. You go to a dungeon, and then if you beat the dungeon, there'll be some kind of device you can turn on that corrupts the world, and suddenly you have temporal storms, but don't have it right off the bat.
I mean, I get it from the story mode, and they're more annoying, I guess, than like an interesting mechanic, at least for me.
No, I agree with you. Nowadays, I either turn on sleeping through storms setting, or I just, hide in the hole and AFK and go do something else, go make a cup of tea.
That's the problem. That's what you end up doing because there's not much point. And it seems like the drops are even worse now for getting temporal gears, which I always want because I love opening TLs. That's the other thing I didn't personally like was when they changed the gears to be a limited use item.
Was it different beforehand? I'm not familiar with this.
Originally, it was you get the gear. That's your spawn point, like forever sort of thing until you do it again. But you can change it when you start up your game, so it's not really that big a deal.
So I actually think from now on, I'm going to start playing with that enabled, but I'm going to limit the spawn feature to a single respawn per gear to make it more interesting.
That's the other interesting thing is challenge mode things. And if you get like the tent bag mod, I think that'd be another cool one, which is the tent bag is one of my favorites now. Kind of an overpowered mod because you could get yourself a little mini base that you take around with you.
We need an airship base. You just have like a little floating airship base. You just travel around. It can be slow, but at least it lets you travel, instead of having a static base.
The Elk is amazing how they have that set up, and they have all the mounting points and the control. Everything is great about the Elk, except it's such a huge pain in the butt to get those things through a TL. You have to get off at just the right spot, and then it will go through, and then you have to get through and get on it again or move it before it just teleports back again. And then the ships are really cool too. We've had a lot of fun, especially in multiplayer with those, but it's like you should be able to bind yourself to a ship and then have that as your mobile base. That would be very cool also.
I did hear that the ships are actually not much faster than a raft.
Yes, that is a problem. Ours are boosted to an absurd degree, but that's because our ocean is like 60-40 or something. So we have some rather large oceans. So our boats are fast. They're faster than the primitive survival raft, which is already ridiculously fast.
Let's just end here. Thank you for doing this with me. This was fun. So maybe we can do it again. I like to chat with fellow vintage story players and YouTubers. I'm ready to make a t-shirt and start wearing it around and see if anybody bites, find at least one person.
I should make a t-shirt. I have that technology. I always wonder, like, what it'd be like to come across someone talking about vintage story, like in the real world.
Your shop could be doing those, Tyrone said it's fine as long as it's clearly not official. Nice chatting with you, and like I said, hopefully you get some exposure from this. And I just enjoy spotlighting the community, and I feel like a lot of people deserve a lot more support. And I mean, I really appreciate people that are modding on a regular basis and creating these amazing mods. Like doing it for free. It's so cool.
No, it was fun. Thanks for inviting.
This concludes my interview with QPTech. Once again, big shout out to QP for contributing his valuable time. If you're still here, I love you. Hopefully you get something out of this interview. My next Vintage Voices episode should be with another Anego Studio developer. As I alluded earlier, Sarity politely declined my request for an interview, but gave me a few leads to pursue. Meanwhile, I'm back to recording another 100-day episode that should be coming out next. Per usual, I got a lot of ideas and a lot on my plate, and on that note, Oscillascape is beaming out.